I also teach accent modification workshops for faculty at UNC who are non-native speakers who want to improve their ability to be understood in the classroom and in presentations that they give. But we focus on that, the target isn't for them to speak general American English or, standard American English, as it's sometimes called, but to speak English as an international language. So the difference would be the students need to become accustomed to hearing different accents because English is an international language. They don't need to have the expectation that everyone speaks general American English. So some of those things are not necessarily related to the actual sounds or pronunciation. So for example, the way we put stress on certain words can make a huge difference in how well someone is understood. Because in English, we stress words that we say have content. So those are content words are nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. And we stress those words. And we don't stress things like articles and pronouns and fillers. So if a person is not appropriately placing stress on content words, it's very difficult to follow what they're saying. So they can make a huge difference right away if they just focus on that. And that's the first thing we always do in the workshop. And when I tell the students ahead of time that that's what we're going to do, and I know they're always very skeptical and they're kind of thinking, how is that going to really help their pronunciation? And then I've had several students who after that would say, I just can't believe how much more I could understand them just from that exercise. So it's so that's another thing, is just being aware that it's not just the grammar, the speech sounds, the vocabulary. There's also what we would call suprasegmentals, but anyway, extra things that influence our message, like the stress. So if someone said, I don't know, if I said, I am a clinical assistant professor. So some people put equal stress on every word, and it sounds very sharp and aggressive to English speakers. So they might actually be perceiving this person really negatively as having an aggressive personality when all they're doing is using the stress pattern of their native language. Well, right now I'm probably speaking in more of a monotone because I've had a cold recently. But in general, in the United States, people don't realize actually that your speaking voice has musical notes in it. So if you think of an octave as being 8 musical notes, most people's speaking range is about half an octave or about 4 musical notes. So if I say, how are you? I'm kind of going up and down. And in English, we only want our intonation to go up at the end of a phrase if it's a yes-no question. So if I said, do you think it will rain today? Then I go up at the end. So one thing we notice is that if people start to go up at the end all the time, it makes them sound really uncertain, and it makes them sound like they don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of people do this when they're giving presentations, and then the audience thinks they don't know what they're talking about. And so we talk about that and how they need to make sure that their intonation is going back down at the end of a statement, or even an open-ended question, like, do you think it will rain or be sunny today? So that's not a yes-no question, so it goes down at the end. So really we have very few scenarios in which you're going to have rising intonation at the end. So that's one thing we work on. And then the other is just making sure that you have the modulation, or a range that's if it's 1 or 2 notes, that's perceived as monotone. So you want to probably get a little more in there. However, if your range is too wide, then you can be perceived as really flighty or kind of unstable. So if you're constantly putting this wide intonation in your speech, it doesn't sound good either.
So this varies from one language or culture to another?
It could. I've noticed a lot of times I ride the park and ride bus, and I try to just listen when people are talking, and there are certain languages that can sound very staccato to our ears, and those are the ones that usually have more stress on individual syllables. And then there do seem to be some. A lot of the world's languages are tone-based, so that going up or down on an individual syllable can change completely the meaning of the word. We don't use that to signal actually what a word means. And so they would tend to have more intonation. So yes, intonation is one aspect of speech that we work with, not only with individuals with motor speech disorders like apraxia and dysarthria, but it can be a characteristic of a language in general too.